I still remember the night when my best friend arrived at my apartment carrying a small bag and a heart full of pain. The sound of his knock was quiet, but I could feel that something was wrong before I even opened the door. When I saw him standing there, I immediately understood that life had become too heavy for him to handle alone. His name was Daniel, and he had been my closest friend for many years. We had shared countless memories, from the happiest moments to the most difficult times. We had grown together, supported each other, and always found a way to laugh even when life was not easy. Seeing him standing there looking lost and exhausted was something I never expected. Daniel had just gone through a painful breakup after a relationship that lasted almost 5 years. Everyone around us believed that he and his partner were building a future together. They had dreams, plans, and a life they thought would continue forever. But sometimes relationships change slowly, and sometimes people wake up one day realizing that the connection they once had is no longer the same. The hardest part for Daniel was not only losing the person he loved, it was losing the future he had imagined. He had spent years building memories, making plans, and believing in a story that suddenly came to an end. It felt like everything he knew had disappeared overnight. When he came to stay at my apartment, I could see that he was trying to stay strong, but behind his silence there was a lot of sadness. He was the kind of person who always helped others, the one everyone could depend on. Seeing him become the person who needed help reminded me that even the strongest people sometimes need someone beside them. The first few days were difficult. My apartment became more than just a place to live. It became a safe space where he could breathe, rest, and slowly begin to heal. We created a simple routine together. We shared meals, watched movies, walked around the city, and spent quiet evenings remembering old times. Little by little, I noticed small changes. The sadness in his eyes started to disappear. The person who arrived feeling broken slowly started to return. He began enjoying simple things again, finding happiness in moments he had forgotten to appreciate. During that time, I realized that heartbreak is not only about losing someone else. Sometimes it is about losing yourself while trying to hold on to something that is no longer meant for you. Daniel had spent so much time trying to make a relationship work that he had forgotten who he was outside of it. The weeks passed, and our friendship became stronger than ever. We were no longer just friends who shared fun memories. We had experienced a difficult chapter together, and that created a deeper connection between us. One evening, while we were sitting in the apartment, I noticed that Daniel seemed different. He looked calmer, more confident, and more comfortable with himself. The person who had arrived carrying sadness was slowly becoming someone stronger. He started focusing on himself again. He returned to old hobbies, spent more time outside, and began creating a life that was not based on someone else's presence. He learned that happiness could come from within and that losing one person did not mean losing everything. Months later, the day came when Daniel was ready to move into his own place. Watching him pack his things felt strange because the apartment had become part of his healing journey. The same place where he had arrived feeling lost was now the place where he found his strength again. After he left, the apartment felt quieter, but I felt proud. I knew that sometimes the greatest thing we can do for someone is simply being there when they need us most. Looking back, I realized that I thought I was only giving my best friend a place to stay after his heartbreak. I never imagined that I was helping him rebuild his confidence, rediscover himself, and start a completely new chapter of his life. Life has a way of changing unexpectedly. Sometimes we lose people we thought would stay forever, but those moments can teach us important lessons about love, friendship, and our own strength. That experience showed me that true friendship is not only about sharing happiness and celebrations. It is about standing beside someone during their darkest moments and reminding them that they are never alone. Sometimes opening your door for someone can become the beginning of a new story, not only for them, but also for you. As time passed, Daniel's transformation became something I deeply admired. The person who once struggled to get through each day was now slowly building a life filled with new goals and possibilities. It was not an overnight change. Healing rarely happens in a straight line. There were still difficult mornings, moments when old memories returned, and days when he felt the weight of everything he had lost. But the difference was that he no longer allowed those moments to define him. He started understanding that a broken heart does not mean a broken life. The end of one chapter does not mean there are no more pages left to write. He began seeing the breakup not only as a painful ending but also as a turning point that forced him to discover himself again. Our friendship also changed in ways I never expected. Before everything happened, we were used to sharing jokes, adventures, and random conversations. After those months together, we had a different kind of connection. We had seen each other in vulnerable moments, and that created a bond that felt stronger than ever. Sometimes I would think back to the night he arrived at my door. The tired expression on his face, the silence, and the feeling that he had nowhere else to go. It was hard to believe that the same person was now laughing again, making plans, and looking forward to the future. A few months after moving out, Daniel started a new job opportunity that he had always wanted but never had the courage to pursue. During his relationship, he had constantly put his own dreams aside because he was focused on maintaining everything around him. Now, he was finally choosing himself. I watched him grow from someone who was searching for answers into someone who started creating his own path. One afternoon, we met at a small cafe where we used to spend time years before. Sitting there together felt strange because so much had changed. The same person who once looked defeated was now sitting across from me with a completely different energy. He told me that losing his relationship was painful, but losing himself had been even more painful. The breakup forced him to face things he had ignored for years. It showed him what he truly wanted, what he deserved, and what kind of person he wanted to become. Hearing that made me realize something important. Sometimes we think certain people are taken away from us as a punishment, but sometimes their absence creates space for something better to enter our lives. Daniel eventually started meeting new people, exploring new places, and experiencing life without fear. He was no longer searching for someone to complete him. He had finally learned that he was already complete on his own. Years later, we still talk about those days. We laugh about the small moments, the terrible meals we cooked, and the endless nights spent talking on the couch. What was once a painful memory became one of the most meaningful chapters of our friendship. My apartment was just a place with walls, furniture, and a small couch in the corner. But during that period, it became a place where someone found hope again. That experience taught me that kindness does not always come in dramatic forms. Sometimes it is a simple invitation. Sometimes it is staying awake late at night to listen. Sometimes it is sharing a quiet moment with someone who feels lost. We often underestimate how much our presence can mean to another person. We think we need to have perfect advice or a solution to every problem. But sometimes people do not need answers. They just need someone who reminds them that they matter. Daniel's story was never only about a breakup. It was about rebuilding, rediscovering, and learning how to stand again after falling. And my story was not only about helping my best friend. It was about understanding the true meaning of friendship. Because real friendship is not measured by how many celebrations you share together. It is measured by who stays when everything falls apart. That night when I opened the door, I thought I was letting my best friend into my apartment for a few days. I did not know I was opening the door to a memory that would stay with me forever. As the years went by, that period of our lives became something we both looked back on with a strange mixture of sadness and gratitude. At the time, everything felt heavy and uncertain, but with distance, we could see how much growth came from those difficult moments. Daniel became someone who inspired me in ways I never expected. Watching him rebuild his life taught me that people are stronger than they realize. Sometimes we only discover our strength after life pushes us into situations we never wanted to face. He began taking better care of himself. He started waking up earlier, spending more time outdoors, reconnecting with old friends, and making plans that were not based on anyone else's expectations. The confidence that had disappeared during his relationship slowly returned. What amazed me most was how much his perspective changed. Before, he believed happiness was something he could only find through another person. After everything he went through, he understood that happiness begins with knowing yourself and respecting your own journey. I also learned many things during that time. Having someone stay with me was not always easy. There were moments when the apartment felt crowded, moments when routines changed, and moments when I had to be patient. But those small challenges became meaningless compared to the importance of being there for someone who needed support. Friendship is easy when everything is fun and comfortable. It is easy to celebrate achievements, share vacations, and enjoy good memories. The real test comes during the difficult seasons, when someone has nothing to offer except their presence and trust. Daniel gave me a reminder that people do not always remember the perfect words we say. They remember how we made them feel during their hardest moments. Years later, I found myself going through a difficult period of my own. Life had changed, responsibilities had increased, and I was facing challenges that made me question myself. I never expected Daniel to notice, but he did. The same person who once arrived at my door broken was now the person standing beside me. He reminded me of the nights when I had supported him. He showed me that friendship is not a one-way road. The care we give to others often finds its way back to us when we need it most. That moment made me realize how meaningful our friendship had become. It was no longer about one person helping another. It was about two people who had seen each other at their weakest and still chose to stay. We continued creating new memories. We traveled together, tried new experiences, and laughed about how different life looked compared to that difficult night. Sometimes, we would pass by my old apartment building and remember everything that happened there. We would smile because the place represented more than a difficult time. It represented a new beginning. The couch where we spent countless nights talking became a symbol of healing. It was where sadness was shared, where fears were admitted, and where hope slowly returned. I often think about how one simple decision can change the direction of a person's life. If I had ignored the knock on the door that night, if I had been too busy or unwilling to help, maybe Daniel's journey would have been different. But I opened the door. And sometimes, that is all someone needs. Not a perfect solution. Not someone who fixes everything. Just a person who says through actions that they are not alone. Daniel eventually found love again, but this time it was different. He entered the relationship as a complete person, not someone searching for someone else to fill an empty space. He carried the lessons from his past and built something healthier. I was happy for him because I knew how far he had come. The person who once believed his life was over discovered that it was only changing direction. That experience stayed with me because it showed me that endings are not always the end. Sometimes they are hidden beginnings. Sometimes the hardest moments prepare us for the strongest versions of ourselves. The night Daniel arrived at my apartment, he thought he was running away from a broken heart. But in reality, he was walking toward a new version of himself. And I was lucky enough to witness that transformation. Looking back now, I realize that some of the most important moments in life do not announce themselves when they happen. They arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary days and unexpected problems. That night when Daniel stood outside my door, neither of us knew that it would become one of the most meaningful memories we would ever share. Life continued moving forward, and both of us changed in ways we could never have predicted. Daniel became more confident, but not in the way people usually imagine. He did not become someone completely different. Instead, he became more like the person he had always been before he started losing himself. The difference was that now he understood his own value. He stopped chasing approval from others. He stopped measuring his happiness by how someone else treated him. He learned to enjoy his own company, appreciate small moments, and trust his own decisions. One of the things I admired most was how he turned his pain into something positive. Many people allow difficult experiences to make them bitter, but Daniel chose a different path. He used what happened to become more understanding, more patient, and more compassionate toward others. A year after he moved out, we met again at the same place where we used to spend time during his recovery. It was a small park near the city, a quiet place where we often walked when he needed to clear his mind. The strange thing was that the place looked exactly the same, but we were completely different people. Back then, Daniel walked beside me carrying sadness and uncertainty. That day, he walked with confidence and peace. It made me think about how much can change in 1 year. A person can go from feeling like everything is falling apart to realizing that life is still full of possibilities. During our conversation, I noticed something about him. He no longer talked about his past relationship with anger or regret. There was no bitterness in his voice. There was only acceptance. That was when I knew he had truly healed. Healing is not forgetting what happened. It is reaching a point where the memory no longer controls you. Daniel had reached that place. He told me that the hardest lesson he learned was understanding that losing someone does not mean losing yourself. Sometimes people leave because their journey with us has reached its end, and accepting that can be painful but necessary. Those words stayed with me because they applied to many things in life, not just relationships. People change. Situations change. Dreams change. But what matters is how we continue moving forward. Over time, our lives became busier. Work, responsibilities, and new experiences filled our days. We did not spend every evening together like we used to, but our friendship remained strong. That is another thing I learned. True friendships do not need constant attention to survive. Some connections are built so deeply that time and distance cannot weaken them. Every once in a while, Daniel would visit my apartment. The place looked different after years passed, but the memories remained. We would sit on the same couch and laugh about how dramatic everything felt back then. At that time, we thought the pain would never end. Now, we could see that it was only one chapter of a much bigger story. Maybe he would have healed eventually, but I believe everyone deserves someone who reminds them that asking for support is not weakness. We all have moments when we need someone else. No one goes through life without struggling. The strongest people are not those who never fall. They are the ones who allow themselves to be helped, learn from the experience, and stand again. Daniel taught me that. And in a way, he helped me as much as I helped him. Because sometimes we think we are saving someone else, but the truth is that those moments save parts of us too. The experience made me more patient. It made me understand people better. It reminded me to look beyond appearances because someone who seems fine may be fighting battles no one can see. That night changed the way I viewed friendship. Before, I thought friendship was mostly about shared interests, laughter, and good memories. After Daniel stayed with me, I understood that friendship is also about carrying someone's weight when they cannot carry it alone. It is about staying when things become uncomfortable. It is about choosing kindness even when it requires effort. Years later, when people ask me about the most meaningful moments of my life, I rarely mention big achievements or exciting adventures. I think about a simple night. A knock on the door. A tired friend standing outside. A small apartment. A couch. And a moment when people realize that sometimes the greatest acts of love are the quiet ones nobody sees. Because in the end, we do not always remember the things people bought for us or the promises they made. We remember who was there when we needed someone the most. And I will always remember that night when I opened my door to my best friend after his heart was broken. I thought I was giving him a temporary place to stay, but what I really gave him was a reminder that he was not alone, and what he gave me was a lesson I would carry for the rest of my life.